a run quick seed. What you be having now? Do you want to ride or die? La da 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 da.
He was our old friend and colleague.
Our old friend and colleague?
Yeah.
Well, we've got many old friends and colleagues.
Yeah,
Which
who's
one are you
coming up next
referring
on the
to?
show, I just said.
Well, you're talking about Peter Oborne.
I'm talking about Peter Oborne.
Yeah.
Yeah, you paying attention?
Yeah.
You sure?
Of course I'm paying attention.
Because Peter, of
This
course...
is pretty good coming from you. Whenever I tell you a story, about halfway through you start going,
No.
by which time I know that you haven't listened to an actual word I've said.
Yeah. Peter is what you would call one of the big beasts of the political writing classes.
Yes.
Not the political chattering classes, who
No.
are completely different,
Yeah.
who just go around mumbling.
He's
things
very
in the
much his own
background.
man as well.
Very much his own man. He's
Yeah.
got a very, very specific view on the outcome of the election, which most people would say was botched.
Yes.
And which was a fiasco, which has led to
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what interpretation Peter puts on it, because, of course, one of the things that happened over the weekend, which we haven't really spoken about, is that Mrs. Thatcher lost her 2 trusted aides.
Hey? You mean Theresa May?
Sorry, yeah, Theresa May, yeah, sorry.
Mrs. Thatcher's definitely dead, by the way.
She's definitely dead.
Yeah, she hasn't been Prime Minister for a long time.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Mrs. May lost her 2 trusted aides, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill.
That's right.
And, of course, then those people who have suffered the imposition of authority from Ms. Hill and Mr. Timothy
Well, they were
started talking.
enforcers, weren't they? It sounds like from what their behaviour was like, they made Alistair Campbell look like Florence Nightingale.
Well, the one piece I read, which I thought really showed it, was that people, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Philip Hammond, were keeping notes in personal diaries of all the abuse, personally, from word of mouth, texts, attitudes, cancelled appointments, rubbishings were being noted in these diaries, so that if they'd have won the election with the majority they thought, they were going to use these against the prospect of them being demoted from the cabinet and say, you're not putting me out if you do. I'm releasing this information about the way your people treat me.
Now, bullied people.
Now they, talk about the hubris and hubris to humiliation. If it had been a victory, then on Sunday, Chequers, which of course is the Prime Minister's country home, would have been the scene of a fantastic victory lunch. You can imagine it, can't you? Spilling out over the grounds. And Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy would have been pointed to as the beacons of the victory campaign.
And by the way, if they had won in that way, anyone coming to them and saying, you can't sack me or else I'm going to publish these, would have been slaughtered.
Yes, exactly.
And they would have gone, all right, go for it.
Yeah,
we've got a big dossier on you as well.
That's right.
And we'll release that.
But Ms. Hill, who was a former journalist from Scotland and a Sky presenter, according to one report I read, a cabinet minister said, she once rang me when I suspect she was in the bath. I could hear water splashing and the clinking of a glass and all this sort of stuff,
Maybe she's in a swimming pool.
Maybe she was, and he said, but they were terribly dismissive, even to cabinet ministers. And as far as they were concerned, they were the Praetorian Guard around Mrs. May. Okay.
Why did we get on to that? I thought we were talking about Wales and their qualifying campaign.
Well,
it's a leadership challenge. We saw Messrs. Hill and Timothy thrown under the bus pretty unceremonially when she was told, well, if you don't get rid of these 2 bullies, then I'm afraid there's going to be a leadership challenge on Monday, which would have been today. She's having to compromise all the way through, isn't she?
Yeah, so that's one area. Mrs. Hill or Miss Hill and Master Timothy, they were bullies. They behaved in an outrageous way, but unfortunately, the Prime Minister seems to have had some kind of dependence on them. And she basically was told, "You're quite right. You've got to get rid of them." Now, can she exist without these 2 sort of crutches? That's a big question. But once again, she's brought in somebody who's very sensible to replace them, called Gavin Barwell, who was a housing minister, Croydon MP. I think that's a little. I think there are various questions. One, has she got the inner toughness to deal with that? Have this new relationship with the cabinet, much more powerful against her than it was. And without her 2 sort of creatures she had, the Timothy and the Hill, the bearded wonder and Fiona Hill. And then I think there's the issue of, has she got the calibre. I mean,
because my villain is Mr. Philip May, who is the Prime Minister's husband.
Yes.
Now, if you read as deeply into the fiasco as I did over the weekend, I know you don't have time because you have a family and you don't have the inclination because you
don't worry,
have better things to do.
I do enough reading. Don't you worry about that.
Mrs. May had a kitchen cabinet of 3 people, and they included Fiona Hill, Nick Timothy, and Mr. Philip May.
Yes.
So when they all sat down and made policy, one of the great accusations is going to be that she completely ignored cabinet policy to the extent that the cabinet didn't even see the manifesto that killed her.
Yeah.
Because if somebody had seen the manifesto and seen the dementia tax being included in it, then somebody would have spoken up and said, this is not good.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. May was the third advisor.
Yes.
And Mrs. May only seems to have taken advice from Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy, which has killed off her prime ministership. And
well, it may or may not have done, depending
it may or may not
on how
have done. It certainly killed off any chances of getting a majority government of her own. And I think Mr. Philip May, for keeping stum and not, getting involved to save his wife's position, to save the position of the Prime Minister, to save the position of the majority in the House of Commons, which she needed, makes him a villain.
Because he's advised her badly.
He's not advised her. That's the point. He's not advised her. He's watched his wife. Shouldn't you really, if you're man and wife, have your antennae up to look after your partner in life at all times? And he just left her drift into this situation. He's supposedly a very clever man.
Yeah.
He's supposedly a successful businessman.
They didn't see it coming, did they?
Well, he didn't see it coming. He should have seen it coming. He should have seen coming that she was relying on 2 people who...
Very historical.
No, yours is historical. You're going right back to...
Mine is about what she's doing
election,
now.
And I'm telling you why it happened, right?
No, I'm...
Hail Mary with me. Hail Mary, nigga, run quick, see what you be having.